A very good morning to you on this 11th day of June. It's bitingly cold in Johannesburg, where we've been broadcasting from for the past 3 months now. And we head back to Cape Town later today. But if you've joined us, then you have joined us on the fifth connection. You have the advantage on YouTube when you view these podcasts of seeing the illustrations and the slides flash. Radio doesn't have that privilege because I don't have a face for radio. But this morning, we are privileged to have you join us as we talk you through the storyline of the letter that was written to the church at Philippi. Remember, the scriptures is an unfolding story. And the story has been given to draw us into God's story, because that's what stories are designed to do. They draw us into the telling. That's what makes stories so significant. And so this morning we are in the section in the text, which is chapter 3. We've just come out of chapter 2 of the story, where we've tracked the mother of all stories, verse 1 to 11 of chapter 2, which talks about the humbled mind exalted. Because the way to transformation, the way for transformation in your life has to do with the humbled self exalted. Jesus left heaven's glory. Transcendence coalesced with immanence at Calvary. And God became a man, lived like us, but died on a cross, only to rise again, to give us the pattern, to give us the archetype, to set the stage for what transformation across a life would look like, not only individually, but also corporately as the assembly transforms under the influencing power of the Spirit of God. And so Paul moves from the meta story in 1 to 11 of chapter 2. Then he moves to the macro story, which is how the assembly transforms from one degree of glory to another, according to 2 Corinthians 3:18. Then he moves to the meso story. He talks about two individuals that he knows very well. It's Brother Tim and Brother Epaphroditus, the guy with the 12-letter name. But then he starts off in chapter 3 with a micro picture of what transformation looks like, what dying to rise looks like, what dying to think is all about. Because faith has to do with embodied knowing. It has to do with dispositional knowledge. It's not just in the head. Knowledge is something which is dispositional and gives rise to propositional statements. Please remember, on this channel, we are not given to glorifying propositional statements, because propositional statements are but the starting point. Sentence statements about what truth is can by no means capture all of what absolute truth is. But propositional statements are the currency of dispositional knowing. And so propositional statements should be the starting point, not the end game. The end game for the follower of the way is transformation, becoming more and more Christ-like. That is what Paul is talking about in chapter 3. We ended up with verse number 9 of the storyline, where Paul says, I am not driven by narcissistic endeavors. It's not about me, myself, and I. It's about me in the context of community under the guiding and shaping hand of the God of the cosmos. I'm not driven by narcissism, but I'm made right through continuity of contact with the one. Who is the one? Christ. With the one who is the embodiment of identity transformation. Jesus shows us what a transforming identity looks like and what it looked like. He left heaven's glory, was born in a manger, died on a cross, and he was elevated to the right hand of the Father, a position of preeminence. And that dying to rise idea is what becomes the pattern for the Christian life. Dying to ego attachments. Paul has given us a grocery list of egoic attachments that he dealt with in his own life. Those ego attachments come up in verse 5 and verse 6, where we unpacked for you how that the flesh is a merc, M-E-R-C. The flesh is moral, educated, religious, and cultured. Can put a three-piece suit on you, a collar and tie on you, and give you a preacher's tone, and you will look very conforming. But what Paul says, I count all this but excrement in relation to what I gain in my transforming on a moment by moment, on a day by day basis in becoming more Christ-like. And so our ego attachments is what is in view in chapter 3 from verse number 1 to verse number 11. And he's really warning us against the need or for the need to counter egoic attachments to stuff, to people, to our homes, to our kids, to our possessions, to status. Because that's not what is going to carry you through what transformation looks like. Verse 8 says, I count everything as loss because of the surpassing worth of knowing Christ. And so when you move from one degree of development in your Christian life to the next degree, you will find that you will go through nothing short of an ego death. A dying to that which you consider important and rising to newness of life. Because you see, the Christian life is not about old, stiff, stodgy, stale kind of stuff. It's about the joys and the blessings of the Lord being new every single morning when you wake. It's a life given to creativity and novelty and newness. I've often said, if you listen to one preacher, you've listened to them all. Because some sermons flow like glue, and they don't come out of creative, new, fresh encounters with the risen Lord. But that's why moving from verse number 9 to verse number 10 in this section of the story is such a killer, and the pun is intended. Because Paul, in saying, transformation is my goal, says in verse number 10, that I may know him. That I may know him. That word for know is experiential knowledge. Knowing by experience. Knowing through health and ill health in life. Through living with much and living with little. It has to do with failure, injustice, and betrayal that you will face in your life as you grow deeper with God. If you haven't experienced that, you don't know the bite of the nail. If you have, then you know what this verse is talking about. Something of what it says. That I may know him in my experience and the power of his resurrection. See, it's one thing to say, oh, I love the resurrection power that God unleashes in the life of those who follow him. But it comes at a price. And the price you will pay, the price I will pay is death, nothing short of it. It will either be physical or it will happen in the spiritual realm. But the bite is no less telling, no less cutting, that I may know him in the power of his resurrection and may share his sufferings, becoming like him in his death. You want to go deep with God? Well, what does he do? He bids you to come and die to those ego attachments that you have. Those attachments are bridges to life and living. But the moment they become egoic attachments, they make me what I am. I am my money, my position, my health, my strength, my family, my connections. I've missed it. Dispositional knowing is what has power to it. What is dispositional knowing? A posture of learning by experience in the crucible of not just the good times, but when the times are not good. Because the God in the good times is the same God in the tough and challenging times. A dispositional knowing that has power to it because of the pattern. What's the pattern for transformation? Dying to rise. Dying and rising. Nothing short, men and women. This kind of teaching, this kind of thing that the Bible says here won't get you to Jesus' jump. And I want to tell you this morning, I'm not a martyr for punishment, even though my surname is Martin. Not closely related to being a martyr. None of us want to be martyrs. But are you dying to think? Because in chapter 2, right into chapter 3, Paul is challenging the cognitive processes of believers. The cognitive spark that ignites in you will come at a price. You need to learn what it means to die in order to think creatively and fresh and new every morning. Dying to rise. I can think back to one of the crisis experiences in my own life, where in 1999, these grace truths dawned in my own life, that it will come at a price to go deep with God and deeper with the Lord. You see, we think this idea of dying and rising is foreign to the Christian life. It's the warp and the woof of the Christian life. It is the Tao. If you don't like the word Tao, it's the Mandarin/Chinese word for way. John 14:6 in Mandarin says, Jesus is the Tao. He is the way for living. The last time I checked, John 14:6 says, Jesus is the true and living way. He is the Tao. But the Tao is not the Tao. Tao is not about 10 prescriptions, 5 techniques, 2 mysterious secrets to living in this way. It's about learning what dying to rise is all about. It's about the humbled self, exalted. Do you know something of that this morning? That it will cost you your life. I've often said, between my wife and I, it has costed us our life to rear our kids to where they are at in life now. Married, and one of them with a grandkid already. But to walk with God is going to cost you all you have, not just some of what you have. It will cost you all. Your small ambitions, your great aspirations, your successes, your failures. Paul says, I count them but a heap of rubbish in relation to what I gain. I gain the Tao. I gain access to this journey of discovery, because that is what truth is all about. It is a journey of discovery. Oh, yeah, we believe there's absolute truth, but you can't have it all. You don't have the capacity to have it all. You engage on a journey across a lifetime pursuing truth as you engage with the scriptures and then encounter the cosmos, encounter every facet of reality that is possible to encounter, that I may know him in the crucible of experience. And you can never overestimate your capacity to pre-specify relevance for other people. We're very quick to give others answers for the dilemmas they face, don't we? It's like taking a pill a day that keeps the devil away. A verse a day keeps the devil away. Rather than understanding, it's all about an encounter with a person, the transcendent God, who becomes immanent in the life and the trenches of your experience as you face failure, injustice, and betrayal. And if you haven't faced betrayal, your turn will come. I'm not a prophet of doom, but it's part of the deal. Dying to rise. And yet, scripture says, O death, where is your sting? O grave, where is your victory? But that's how God works into a human life, vis-a-vis death and resurrection. Do you understand that? It was that French preacher who said that Lacordaire was his name. He said that the church is born crucified. The assembly is birthed out of the context of crucifixion. And long before you drop, if you're walking with the Lord, you will taste something of that. But you can have a jump in your step because he has a way of elevating you, getting you to rise out of the depths of what you're facing. What deep life experience are you going through that you cannot even articulate this morning? You can't even verbalize the pain and the pangs of trauma in your heart. Well, he can give you a new lease on life. But it's about letting go to what you are holding on to and allowing the cross to cut, to sever those ego attachments that you have on this Wednesday morning. Because egoic attachments give us security, but security that is temporal. How about securities that are eternal and that can give us the kind of longevity across a lifetime as we grow older? I trust that your heart is encouraged this morning, knowing that you can experience a resurrection power, the kind of power that rolled away a 1 to 2.5 ton stone of a crypt that encased his body, that he rose physically with a glorified body. That's the kind of power that's available to you. Resurrection power. So if you want to grow deep and go deep, it will come at a price. What price are you willing to pay this morning as you walk with the Lord and wrestle with some of these realities in your life? Because what is truth? Truth is that which corresponds to reality as it is. Trust that you enjoy the Lord as you walk with God this day. Goodbye for now.